När tredje ljuset brinner, vi juleklappar syr och vi bakar kakor och har ett fasligt styr. Hi, my name is Jen and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today is the 4th Advent and it is also Lucia. I thought that we would spend some time to talk a little bit about this tradition. Lucia is a Swedish tradition named after an Italian saint, but the origins of the tradition really has very little to do with this saint other than just the name. Some sources write that the tradition commemorates the martyr Lucia of Syracuse, who, as legend has it, brought food to the Christians hiding in Roman catacombs, lighting her way with a candlelit wreath on her head. But the tradition existed before we gave it the name of this saint, and when reading more into the past of this tradition, very little weight is bound to this saint's personhood. Because is it not a little strange that Sweden would be the nation to come up with the idea to celebrate this Italian saint on this day by aligning a choir train made up of elves, gingerbread men, handmaids, and star boys singing not just Sancta Lucia, but also the tale of Staffan and Hey Elves, hit the glasses, let's get weird. Then drink glögg, Julmust, and eat ginger snaps and lussekatter. I kind of think that it's a little bit weird. The name Lucia actually comes from the Latin word lux, which means light. And the celebration of Lucia is really about light in darkness. During the 1300s, when we still had the Julian calendar, Lucia night would fall on winter solstice. It was the longest and darkest night of the year. The belief was that supernatural powers would reign during this time, and it was best to stay inside and to stay awake all night, which was called lussevaka. Some people still hold this tradition alive. Lucia has also been called Mother's Night, and everything tied to Lucia used to be very regional, stemming mainly from western Sweden, from Bohuslän, Västergötland, Dalsland, and Värmland. The celebration could look very different depending on where you were. There is one legend about this night called Lucy Night, where the Lusse hag, a female creature with evil capacities like a female demon or a witch, would come riding through the air with her entourage. This was called Lussifärd, or Lucy Ride. Children who had misbehaved had to be especially careful during this night so that Lucy would not travel through the chimney and kidnap them. During this very dark time of the year in pre-Christian Scandinavia, the powers, or gods if you may, of light were conjured to get the light to return. It's from these conceptions and performances surrounding the light, darkness, and the cycle of the year that the Swedish light holiday originally stems from. The tradition of a light-bearing female could have its roots in a pagan light goddess. Winter solstice was the darkest time of the year, but it was also the beginning of Yule. Your pig was to be butchered on this day, and you were supposed to be done with the majority of your work before the big Yule celebration. Lucia Day was also called Little Yule, and it was regarded as being the day when baking, threshing, and brewing was supposed to be finished for the year. If all of the preparations before Yule were not done, the Lucy hag that I mentioned previously would punish the household. After the shift from Gregorian to Julian calendar, Lucia no longer aligned with the winter solstice, but the folklore and customs tied to this light celebration continued well into the 1600s and 1700s. The modern celebration that we so closely associate with Lucia today, namely the choir train, is relatively new. According to the sources that I used when reading about Lucia, the modern type of celebration that we see today has only existed for the past maybe 100 years. But as you can tell, the roots go much further than that. One tradition that I really wish to see again is tied to the song that I mentioned previously, the tale of Staffan. Why do we sing about him on this day, and where did he come from? We have had many different variations of this Staffan song, and one tradition that I thoroughly enjoyed reading about was the Staffan ride. This was strictly reserved for the village's young men. All of the young men in the village who wanted to join would meet up on the 26th of December with their horses. It was important that one of these men were riding on a white horse. This man would be regarded as being Staffan. Everyone would have practiced the so-called Staffan song, and they would rehearse this song once together before riding towards the village's farms and households. It was important that Staffan would always be first, and when they arrived to the house, they would all align and he would stand in the middle, and they would serenade the household with the Staffan songs. It was a regular occurrence for the Staffan singers to receive a drink or two before the serenading could begin. So as the night pursued, they would become better at singing somehow. Their voices would be clearer, more powerful, and maybe most of all, louder. When the night came to a closing and the sun was rising, the men would hurry back home if they hadn't already fallen asleep in a ditch somewhere or maybe lost their horse on the way. You could speculate if this tradition was more enjoyed by the households being serenaded or by these young men riding around on their horses, drinking and singing all night long. Today is the 3rd Advent, and Christmas is getting close now. Let me know what you would like me to talk about in the next episode and the last episode of this series. Thank you so much for all of the lovely responses that I've received from this series. I know this is very different from what I usually do, and I promise I will get back to my old content as well. I just wanted to finish this year off with something just positive. Thank you for watching, and extra thank you to my Patreons. I'll see you in the next one.